Who assigned it to you?
Sir, that's not for me to talk to you about on this. I'm sorry. This isn't a classified setting. I'm sorry. I'm not trying to be ugly. You know how classified situations work.
Which agency classified it?
It wasn't an agency. It was done here, well, in the House on the time.
The House classified it.
I'm assuming. I wasn't on Intel.
We're just not really aware of how the House classifies things.
I have no idea. I know every time we spoke about this, we had.
The hearing room didn't feel like routine oversight. It felt like a slow, deliberate trap being set. Senator Gary Peters leaned forward, steady, but sharpened with intent. Papers were neatly stacked in front of him, each one leading somewhere very uncomfortable for Senator MarkWayne, a nominee for the Secretary of Homeland Security. He didn't just return with arguments. He came back with verifiable evidence, documented inconsistencies, and a line of questioning designed to close every gap. Watch what happens when a senator arrives, not to make speeches, not to trade headlines, but to press for answers. He asked, "You've said you've smelled war. Where did that happen? Why did it take prompting from your FBI report for you to remember that trip?" Senator Gary Peters methodically laid out records, referenced the Federal Bureau of Investigation findings, and confronted prior statements one by one, leaving little room for deflection. Before we dive into this heated confrontation conversation, let me tell you who Senator Gary Peters is. Senator Gary Peters isn't just another voice in the chamber. His record shows a lawmaker who combines effectiveness with discipline and policy depth with strategic focus. Consistently ranked among the most effective and bipartisan members of the U.S. Senate, Peters has built a reputation on results. During the 117th Congress, he passed more standalone bipartisan legislation than any senator in over 4 decades, a rare achievement in an increasingly divided political landscape. Independent analysis by the Center for Effective Lawmaking placed him as the #1 most effective senator in both the 116th and 117th Congresses, underscoring not just productivity but impact. As chair of the Senate Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs Committee, Peters has developed deep expertise in areas that demand precision and accountability: cybersecurity, federal oversight, and national preparedness. His background adds another layer. As a former Navy Reserve Lieutenant Commander, Peters understands military structure, operational discipline, and the weight of national security decisions. He has also translated that experience into advocacy, pushing for expanded VA benefits for Guard and Reserve members, ensuring service doesn't end without support. These qualities don't just make him an effective legislator. They make him a formidable interrogator, because someone who writes and passes detailed bipartisan laws, oversees complex federal systems, and understands military and security frameworks firsthand, doesn't ask surface-level questions. He asks structured ones. He listens for inconsistencies. He tracks timelines. He separates what is said from what can be proven. He started questioning MarkWayne. Senator MarkWayne MULLIN. He began, calm but unyielding. "You've told the public stories. Fragments of war, hints of operations, suggestions of places most Americans will never see. But today, under oath, we're not dealing in fragments. We're dealing in truth." Mullin shifted slightly, composed but watchful. Peters didn't raise his voice. "You said you've smelled war. You've described it vividly. Not metaphorically. That's not language people borrow. That's language people live." He leaned in closer. "So help me understand. Were those experiences real or rehearsed?" The room tightened. Mullin answered carefully. "I've already said, there are things I can't discuss." Peters cut in, not louder but sharper. "No, Senator. That's the point. You can't discuss details, yet you chose to describe the experience publicly. So which is it? Classified or convenient?" Mullin answered carefully. "As I've said, there are classified aspects." Peters nodded, almost expecting it. "Classified," he repeated, "yet publicly described. So I'll ask again, directly this time. Were you ever in a combat zone where you personally experienced active conflict? Yes or no?" Mullin hesitated. "I've already said, there are classified, Peters raised a hand slightly. No, Senator. That's not an answer. That's a boundary. A beat. I'm asking for a yes or a no. Not details. Not locations. Just truth. The room leaned in. Mullin shifted. I've been in areas. Areas, Peters repeated. Defined how? No response. Peters didn't wait. Let's move to travel. He flipped another page. You stated clearly that outside of vacations or mission work, you had not traveled internationally. Another page. Then, when confronted with your background file, you acknowledged travel tied to Afghanistan evacuation efforts through Georgia and Azerbaijan. He looked directly at Mullin. Why did it take prompting from your FBI report for you to remember that trip? Mullin responded quickly. I thought you were referring to something else. But I wasn't, Peters cut in. And that's the issue. Mullin getting boxed in. You didn't forget a trip. You omitted it until it was presented back to you. Now the tone shifted firmer. And that brings me to the Federal Bureau of Investigation. The room stilled again. Peters leaned forward slightly. I personally asked the FBI yesterday very specific questions. He spoke slower now, each word deliberate. I asked if Senator Mullin had participated in any classified operation, any coordination with the Department of Defense, the State Department, or intelligence agencies. Would there be a record? A pause. They said yes. I asked, did you find anything? Silence filled the gap before he answered his own question. They said no. The tension snapped tighter. Peters held Mullin's gaze. Classified means restricted, not erased. He gestured lightly. You're telling this committee that you were part of something so sensitive only a handful of people knew. Yet no agency record reflects your involvement. Another question came immediately. Who authorized the mission? Mullin shook his head. I can't say that. Which office? I can't. Which branch of government? It was within the House. Peters leaned in quickly. Energy and Commerce? Mullin hesitated. That's where I was. And that committee runs classified overseas operations now? Peters asked, eyebrows slightly raised. A ripple moved through the room. Mullin's tone sharpened. That's not what I said. Then what are you saying? Peters pressed. Another beat. You've now told us this was what? A fact-finding mission? An official trip? A classified assignment? He spread his hands slightly. Which one is it? No immediate answer. Peters didn't slow down. Because those are three very different things. Another question, quick, precise. Did this mission involve weapons? Did it involve U.S. military personnel? Did it involve coordination with any federal agency? Did you receive any formal designation? Contractor? Advisor? Anything? Each question stacked on the last. Mullin tried to respond, but Peters kept the pressure controlled. Not chaotic, but relentless. Let me simplify it further, Peters said. Were you ever under the authority of the Department of Defense in any capacity, formal or informal? No. State Department? No. Any intelligence agency? No. Peters leaned back slightly, letting that sink in. Then we are left with this. He spoke slowly now. You were not military, not State Department, not intelligence, not a contractor, not a volunteer in any formal program. A pause. And yet, he leaned forward again. You want this committee to accept that you participated in a classified overseas assignment tied to conflict that left no trace in any federal system. Silence. Then Peters delivered the line that reframed everything. Do you understand why that sounds less like a classified operation and more like an unverified claim? The room held its breath. Mullin exhaled, frustration now visible. I've offered to go to a secure setting. And we will, Peters said. But understand this. Going to a secure room doesn't erase what's already happened here. He tapped the table lightly. Because this isn't just about what you can't say. Another pause. It's about what you have said. Publicly, repeatedly, confidently. He glanced down briefly, then back up. And every time we test those statements, new details appear, new explanations, new boundaries. A final series of questions, slower now but heavier. Why didn't you disclose this earlier? Why did it only emerge when pressed? Why does every clarification introduce something new? And why should this committee believe there's nothing else that hasn't surfaced yet? No interruption this time. No immediate answer. Just silence. Peters leaned back fully now, the pressure no longer in his voice, but in the absence of it. By the end of the exchange, no definitive answer had been forced out, but that wasn't the point. The confrontation wasn't about extracting a confession. It was about exposing gaps. On one side stood a senator insisting on classification, limits, and technical compliance. On the other stood a line of questioning focused on patterns, shifting timelines, expanding explanations, and statements that seemed to grow more detailed only when challenged. For observers, the takeaway becomes a matter of interpretation. Was Senator Mullin protecting genuinely sensitive information the only way he could? Or was he relying on the shield of classification to avoid scrutiny of claims that don't fully hold up under pressure? And perhaps the deeper question lingering after the hearing. When a public figure builds part of their credibility on experiences they cannot clearly verify, should that credibility stand unquestioned? The hearing didn't answer that outright, but it made one thing unavoidable. Everyone watching now has to guess their answers in their minds as the hearing is being adjourned. Subscribe and like to follow up on this confrontational topic. MarkWayne kept holding on, but when the questions got so precise, there was nowhere left to go.